Well, you brought up hockey, and here to help us break it down is one of the long-standing friends of the show, Sportsnet, Hockey Central, Hockey Night in Canada. Brian Burke joins us here on Tim and Sid. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Burke. How are you?
Good, guys. Congratulations on 5 years.
I'm waiting for the shot. I'm waiting for the dig. Is there a dig coming after that? Is there a shot?
I can't really say much because the longest I lasted with the team was 6.
Oh, nice. So we got a year.
Berkey, when did you know, asking for a friend, when did you know that it was ending?
Well, in Vancouver, so I got let go in 2004. And the first time they talked about a contract for me, and my last year was in November, and then we never talked again. So even a thick Irishman like me figured out that I probably wasn't coming back. It was the worst kept secret in British Columbia.
So the contract, that's a big part.
Contract's a big one.
How sick are you talking about bubbles, hub cities, and CBAs?
Well, the CBA, I think, is really important. I never get tired of talking about that. I'm sick of hub cities. I'm glad we're near a resolution. I think we're at one. They just haven't finalized it yet. Return to play. I mean, you step back. When this all happened and they shut us down, I predicted we would not finish the season. And I was right. We could not finish the season in the allotted time. The NHL was smarter and said, we'll build out some runway. And I think this plan could work and may work. And I give the league full credit. We've got to try to play. Like, we're going to come back to a ravaged economic landscape anyhow. But if we don't play, starting up next fall, I don't know what we're looking at. So full marks. I'm sick of the hub cities. Get them done. But the CBA, I think we asked fans to come back this fall. And I don't mean to attend the games because they cannot. But to watch the games on TV and get back into bed with us. And then a year from now, we had a work stoppage. I think that would be catastrophic. So I think it's very big news. I don't understand the mathematics of it, to be honest with you. But I think it's great news.
Brian Burke here on Tim and Sid. In terms of the CBA aspects to this, Berkey, what have you read? What have you seen reported that really surprises you? That even in this unique a time, one side or the other would push more in the middle on an issue. What stuck out?
Well, I think the financial circumstances. So you're talking about a 10% deferral by the players. They're going to defer this income. My guess is there's a trigger that if revenues don't reach a certain point, that money's gone forever, but that's fine. A cap of 20% on escrow. Escrow is going to be way over 20%. Way over with the revenues the teams are going to generate. So that's a concession to the players. Say the owners are temporarily at least going to eat way more of the losses than the players. But if you combine those two things, 10% deferment, 20% escrow cap, you're looking at basically a 30% cut in salaries was what they're going to net, in my view. I think the only reason this makes sense is because the new United States television deal is coming up in 2 years. And I think it's clear that the league thinks they can make some money on that, and that will sort this all out. But in the meantime, the math makes no sense to me at all. We're not going to be anything like a 20% escrow next year with the revenues the teams are going to generate. It's going to be more like 40 or 50%.
Is that why you think the Olympics is on the ledger? Because they could probably bring in some significant money, if not from the IOC, but from sponsorship?
Well, they haven't yet, and the IOC has never allowed the NHL to even use the NHL gets the same television rights that any other news station does. 10 seconds worth of replay capability. If the NHL wants to use the golden goal, they got to pay for it. Our players, and we got to pay to use the footage. So they talked about enhanced footage rights. They talked about some marketing rights with the rings, and the IOC said flat no. I don't know why that would change. I don't think it's a windfall financially so much as the players really want to go. I think we should be there. I think it's a great marketing tool for the NHL, but it wreaks havoc with the schedule. And, in some markets, like in Carolina and Florida, it closed down for 2.5 weeks in February is crazy. But I think we should go, and I think the players thought it was important. Keep in mind, on every team, there's a maximum. On a really good team, there might be 5 Olympians. The other 15 vote to go to the Olympics so that they can get that time off. They get a week off, and they go to Mexico or someplace. I don't know where you can go now, but so I'm glad we're going to the Olympics. I think it's important to the players. I think it's good for our league. I can't wait to see the schedule that year, though. It's going to be awful.
Yeah, it's going to be full. Brian Burke here on Tim and Sid. Berkey, in terms of the reporting today that Edmonton will get the whole shebang by the time it ends in theory, Stanley Cup Final would be held in Edmonton. When you look at all this and how it played out, and Alberta was always where they were in terms of COVID-19 cases, very low comparative to other places. Why do you think Edmonton had to work this hard to get to this point when reportedly 10 days ago it was going to be Vegas, Vancouver? Like, it just mathematically, this made complete sense the entire time in Alberta. What was the hesitation based on what you're hearing?
Well, I think the health authorities and the fact that Vegas looked like a lock, and they wanted some Eastern time zone presence. You can imagine we're going to be playing 2 games a day at least, possibly 3 in the first play-in round, because you've got the bye team games and you've got the best of 5. So conceivably 3 games a day some days. And so to me, they talked about Vegas being a lock, but if you didn't have an Eastern time zone, that's really hard to play 3 games. So you'd ask Toronto fans to stay up and watch a game that starts at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night. Good luck. So I think this gives the separation they wanted time zone wise. I think Alberta pushed very hard and did a very intelligent selling job. I think their public health authorities were helpful. And finally, the federal government in Canada stepped up and said, we'll waive the quarantine. Now, they weren't similarly helpful in Vancouver, and that's why they dropped out. They had a much tougher, much higher bar to climb with the health authorities there.
Should we raise an eyebrow? And I know you've been relatively conservative about the way this returns and making sure we have the tests and making sure. If Dr. Bonnie Henry, who is basically aced the test or has come as close to acing the test as you can in BC, raises an eyebrow, should the rest of Canada also raise an eyebrow, or am I asking you to be a doctor here?
Well, you're asking me to be a doctor, but my understanding was it was the number of positive cases that would require a shutdown. And apparently in British Columbia, they wanted a very low number, like 4 positive tests is the number I heard. And again, that didn't come from anyone in authority, but what I heard allegorically was 4 positive tests, and they're going to have 4 positive tests. And so other health authorities have said, no, in a tournament involving 12 teams times a cohort of 45, you're going to have 5 positive tests. You're probably going to have 20. So I think that's where it fell apart was my information. But right. I'm really happy for Edmonton they got it. I think this is a big deal to be a hub city.
Brian Burke here on Tim and Sid, and to reportedly be the Stanley Cup Final host on top of that. I mean, I mentioned to Tim earlier in the show, I don't understand why fans necessarily are excited. I understand why politicians and some aspects of the business community in these cities are excited. But if you're a fan, I don't really understand it. But as the show's gone along here, I'm thinking to myself, well, if you're an Oiler fan and you're told eventually the Cup Final is at Rogers Place, does this not light a little extra fire under Connor McDavid in that group? Listen, everyone's going to want to win the Cup. That's why they're there. But do you think this does anything extra for the Oilers as a group?
It might. And I think what it does for the whole time this tournament goes on, and now with Edmonton, it's going to be 2 months. The whole time you've got TV crews from around the globe filing stories from outside Rogers Arena in beautiful downtown Edmonton. Edmonton's beautiful in the summer. And they'll be outside Rogers Arena. Hi, I'm Peter Lundqvist from Stockholm, Sweden, filing my story outside of Rogers Arena in Edmonton. Next to him is a guy from the Czech Republic. Next to him, a guy from Finland. Next to him, a guy from Russia, Germany, and so on. It's great exposure. Is it a big economic payday? No. So the host hotel will get a boost. The people that work there will pick up some extra wages and tips. It's not an economic panacea like the Grey Cup would be or an All-Star game, but it still focuses the spotlight on Edmonton now if they have the host the Stanley Cup Finals for 60 days. So I think it has tremendous value. I think the Premier should be commended for pushing this hard to get it. And I think it's good for Toronto too.
Yeah, the Toronto thing is interesting too, because you got the Jays coming back to town now. They get the letter from the federal government, so you've got, depending on whether or not they play the regular season there, it might be a little bit of worry for the folks in Toronto, wondering how they'll have two different quarantines of two different professional leagues, 12 teams in one, and however many teams come through in baseball.
Well, they're very different circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay, first off, these 12 teams that come to Toronto, and I think you alluded to it in your initial remarks about no one's jumping the queue or showing favoritism. The whole discussion makes me sick to my stomach. No one's ever asked to make an exception for hockey players. What they've said is, we're going to show up, 47 of us, that's the maximum, or 50, the maximum you can have. 30 players, 5 coaches, 5 trainers, GM, assistant GM, PR person, analytics, whatever. 50 max. Having been tested, who are going to arrive on a private jet, land at the private jet terminal, not go through Pearson's terminal, get on a sanitized bus, go right to a quarantined hotel. How does that put me at risk as a Canadian? Answer, it doesn't. There's commercial flights coming into Pearson every day now that put me at risk, but not this flight. And the 12 teams are all going to follow the same protocol and then go into the bubble. The bubble might be the safest place to be in Canada while those guys are here. Baseball's very different. Those players are going to come in from visiting teams and so on. That's not my problem. I don't have any expertise. But to ask for this, for the Canadian government to waive the quarantine restrictions for pro hockey teams coming in for this tournament is a joke. Like, there's no safety issue for me.
But I think where a safety issue could come in here, Berkey, is like, look, we all assume everyone's going to play by the rules. We're all under that pretense because of what we've gone through and how serious the situation is. I am not going to assume that, though. I'm not going to assume that every one of these near 50 people from every team that flies in doesn't have some type of slip up. Someone doesn't take a picture of them walking down the street where maybe they shouldn't. I feel if that were to happen a couple of times, Berkey, I think people, because you're right initially, but I think that's where the conversation might also tend to shift. I just don't trust people that much to completely play by the rules, even in a bubble type scenario.
I don't trust professional athletes to ever play by the rules, but I think they're going to have really good security. And that what I'm told is, any player that violates the ground rules goes home. So someone who manages to sneak out, which I don't know how you're going to be able to do it from what I'm told, but someone who manages to sneak out and tries to get back into the hotel, see ya. So no, I do think they can make the players toe the line. And the group I feel sorriest for is the Black Aces. So if you're a Black Ace, in the old days, you'd come up and so we're in the playoffs in Vancouver. We got 7 extra guys, so they have a bag skate every day after practice. The strength coach puts them through a workout, so they have a terrible morning. And then we play the game that night, and they're in the press box, and then they're free. And the next day, we probably don't practice till noon because we're in the playoffs. Those guys had the life. Go out to the bars, get something to eat, meet some girls. Now they're not going to be able to go out at all. And all they're going to get to do is bag skate every day. That doesn't sound like very much fun.
No. Last one for you before we go. I know it means something for you to walk the Pride Parade route, and you told us that you were going to do it. Did you do it, and what did it feel like walking it on a year like this year?
You know what I did? I went with my ex-wife, Jennifer, and my daughter, Marin, and Rick Mercer, my buddy, who has marched with me before.
Nice.
In Brendan's honor. And we marched the route on Sunday, but we went on Church Street. We didn't go on Yonge. We went on Church, so we're more in the village. Mm-hmm. Walked down to the end of the parade route and walked back. Walking back was a mistake. My knee was killing me. But it was great. It made me think of my son, made me think of the gay community here in Toronto and how important they are to us. And it was just a moment of solidarity. So I had a mask on and went straight down Church Street to the square at Dundas and then walked back up. It was great. And Rick Mercer is a great friend and a great ally. So it was fun. It was really fun. It was awesome. I felt good about that. I thought about my son a lot.
Berkey, we appreciate that story. Thank you for telling us that story. And just generally, as Tim and I kind of reminisce over 5 years and a day of doing this way on Sportsnet, we need good people with us as well. You have been one of those. You've been very kind to us. And hopefully it continues, Berkey. We appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Hey guys, 5 years is a big deal. In this industry, it's a big deal, and you've gotten 5 years because you're really good at what you do. I enjoy coming on with you. So here's to the next 5. Thanks for letting me be a part of it, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
Awesome. And one day we will
Burke.
crack that JD bottle. One day we're going to crack
Absolutely.
that JD bottle.
Absolutely.
It's waiting for you, Berkey. It's waiting for you.
Appreciate it. Be well, okay?
Okay, guys. Thanks.